Hello and welcome to another Sky Fantasy Football video. We're back again with another weekly Q&A where we get the questions from Twitter about your Sky FF questions or dilemmas, and then we answer them on here. Of course, we do this weekly, so if you do want to get involved, Wednesday nights I do put out the tweet asking for some questions or dilemma. So if you want to get involved, make sure you head over there, give me a follow. You'll find it in the top left of the screen, and you can be involved in next week's video. So we're starting off this time with Chris, who says, do you think Mitoma would be a good option to replace Romero? I don't have Dunk and I think Brighton have 3 singles before the end of January. Is there anyone better? So obviously Brighton do have a single coming up against Crystal Palace, and I can't remember exactly who the other one is against, but that is 2 that you get before the overhaul. Obviously we don't really have to worry about the third one, which I think is against Wolves at the end of January, because we can worry about that at the overhaul. So we do have 2 singles, so I do think having a Brighton player is going to be pretty essential. In terms of not having Dunk, I do think Mitoma could be a very, very good option. Brighton do have some very good fixtures coming up. I think they're probably the second best behind Arsenal in terms of upcoming fixtures. So I do think if you didn't want someone like Dunk, you could go to an attacking player. My 3 picks would be Mitoma, Gross or Ferguson. Purely Ferguson, he's a very good price. I think he's 7.8 million, and no one is really using that third striker spot right now, so you probably do have that available. But I think a 3-5-2 is kind of the go-to formation right now, so if you weren't looking for someone like Ferguson, I do think Gross or Mitoma could definitely work quite well. Obviously we did speak about other defenders that you could go for instead over on the Gameweek preview. I think that was Tsimikas, Lascelles and Anderson was the other one. I think do look like 3 good defensive options, but I definitely think you could get away with going for a Brighton attacker. My favourite pick I think is Gross, because he is picking up the passes, so you do have kind of like a base of 5 points there, which Mitoma doesn't have. Gross is not the main penalty taker with Pedro playing when they are on the pitch, but he is still up there in contention for penalties, and he's one of those guys who could pick up shots and tackles as well as passing, and easily some goals or assists. So I do think if you are looking for a Brighton player, Mitoma definitely is good enough, but my pick I think would be Gross at 8.2 million. So next up we have Kelvin, who says, I have a back 3 of Dunk, Romero and Van de Ven in a 3-5-2 with 34 transfers left and 0.9 mil in the bank. Is it worth making 2 transfers to for the Spurs defenders? Looking at Saliba, but it leaves 7.7 mil left. I think you have used a bit more transfers than what you probably would have liked so far, but unfortunately obviously Romero is a must transfer out, and Van de Ven looks like he will be out for a couple of weeks. I think it is some sort of hamstring injury. It doesn't look as bad as it looked on the pitch, but I think it's going to be, I'll be very, very surprised to see him play over the next couple of weeks. So it is probably 2 transfers that you have to make. I do think Saliba is probably one of the best options that you can get in defence right now. So in terms of having 7.7 mil left, you are 0.1 off my favourite pick, which would have been Anderson. He's 7.8. Other than that, Tsimikas, Lascelles, again, you can find more info on them on the Game Week preview that we put out on Tuesday, but I think they are my 2 favourite picks in defence. Next up is Ollie, who says, I missed Namba to Palmer on Monday. Is it worth doing it on the 12th or just stick? 38 transfers left. So you do have lots of transfers to use, and I don't think the boat has gone in terms of making that transfer. The only thing you will have to look out for is Nkunku coming back. It looks like he is going to be returning to training and should be back after the international break. And with Chelsea's front 3, they're kind of playing with Jackson, Sterling and Mudryk right now, and then the midfield's Gallagher and Caicedo. So in terms of looking at the player who would be dropped there, it does look like Palmer is going to be up there in contention in terms of players getting dropped. I think Jackson looks like the obvious option, but Nkunku isn't like an out-and-out striker, so we could end up seeing what we saw in most of pre-season, which is Nkunku playing behind Jackson. So Palmer could be okay, but in terms of playing Mudryk and Sterling, they look like they would be ahead of Palmer in that case. But Palmer is in good form, and at 6.5 million is still a very good option. That is only the one thing that you will have to look out for, is Nkunku coming back and kind of taking that place off of him. But the transfer is still available. I think Luton play on Saturday, Chelsea play on Sunday. So if you want to make that move, that is perfectly okay. The next question comes from Trackstar G, who asks, when's the best time to get Mbeumo? So we're just going to jump over to the spreadsheet quick. And we're looking at Brentford's fixtures then. So obviously they have Liverpool and they have Arsenal in the next two, so you aren't going to want them for them. But then in game week 17 they have a nice little fixture run up till the overhaul. But of course they do have that blank in game week 20 where they were supposed to play Man City and now aren't, so definitely keep that in mind. But the fixtures look great. I mean, scoring against Luton at home seems like a decent gamble. The same with Brighton, the same with Sheffield. So that's 3 games there you would probably hope for an Mbeumo haul. So we're looking at game week 17. Looking at the 3-for-1s, that is about this area right here. It is a Saturday though, which doesn't give the best hop-on point in terms of grabbing a fixture out of it. You can do it on Sunday if you are wanting them, but they are obviously 2 difficult fixtures if you wanted the extra fixture, that is. If not, it's really just anyone that you want to make, because you aren't getting a fixture gain out of it. Maybe if you're holding a Wolves player or a Fulham player that you want to get rid of, moving on to Mbeumo could be quite good. I suppose if you wanted someone like Palhinha for that single game day, and then you don't want to worry about him getting booked and suspended, you can chain him back on to Mbeumo on the 2nd of December. In terms of other days, I suppose there's a Wednesday here. You could always get him on, but you are missing the game against Luton. So again, a Wolves player, an Arsenal player, I wouldn't recommend doing that though. But yeah, there really isn't any real good hop-on points in terms of getting them for these 3 fixtures. So if you're going to want Mbeumo, you need to just accept that you aren't going to have a fixture gain from it and just put them in for anyone you want on that Saturday day there. The next question comes in from Dave Hannigan, who says, I'm seeing a lot of people with 33 to 35 transfers left and others with many more. So if given the hypothetical choice today, would you prefer to be 10k with 40 transfers left or ranked 1.5k with 30 transfers left? I think for me this is a pretty easy one. I think it would definitely be 10k with 40 transfers left. I think at this stage of the season, saving transfers is very, very crucial as per the end or towards the end of the season, or just the second half of the season is in general. If I bring up the point stats from FF stuff, you can see as well there's only about a 77 point difference between 1k and 10k. And if we're talking 10 transfers between that, is 10 transfers worth 77 points? Personally, for me, it's not. I think if I'd used an extra 10 transfers, I'd really be looking at hoping to get about 130, 140 points extra out of that. So I think if I was sitting about 30 transfers right now, I really would want to be inside the top 1,000. But even given that choice, I would rather have the extra 10 transfers available and be a couple thousand ranks less. I think because towards the end of the season and really just the second half in general, you are given a lot more opportunities to make good use of fixture gains and stuff like that. With the Club World Cup and stuff usually going on, there is a lot more fixture gains, especially with late stages in the Cup as well. There's a lot more fixture gains to be had, so it is just better off to have more transfers. Obviously at this stage as well, I'm sitting about 20k and I have 37 transfers left, so that situation would actually be perfect for me. I'd more than happy to be sitting 10k with 40 transfers left. I think that's a very, very, very good position to be in at this stage of the season. Next up, Ian LeBruce asks, is Palhinha worth getting in for Romero this weekend despite being on 4 yellows? So obviously we just spoke about Mbeumo possibly having a daisy chain with Palhinha if you don't want to risk the 4 yellows. The only issue with that is if Palhinha was to pick up a yellow card this weekend, it does miss the game against Wolves, which is your captain day. So is that worth gambling on? For me personally, no. For a few people it might be, because obviously if Palhinha does play, you are probably getting yourself 5 points this weekend and then 10 points minimum from the Wolves game. which is about 15 points. So if you think 2 transfers is worth the 15 minimum points, then sure. But again, you're running the risk that he gets booked at the weekend. For me, I think I personally just leave it. I think there's either a skip, or you could go for someone like Hwang, Leno, and to be honest, it's probably all I would go for. I think if you don't have Hwang or Leno, I probably would just skip that. I don't think it's one of those ones where someone could go score a hat trick kind of thing anyway. So unless you're planning on having one of them in your team long term, like Hwang obviously does have another single day in December, so you'd kind of have to be keeping him for a couple of weeks if you were going for him. I think for this one-off game day, it's probably just a skip. Polina, I think, definitely was a good option, and then he picked up that 4th booking, so now he is just running a bit of a risk of being suspended for that game. So for me, I think I would just leave it, but there is obviously that risk that could pay off, because we know he can score, and he is capable of picking up something like a 10 plus pointer in one game. So if you want to be risky, sure, go for it. In my opinion, it's not going to be worth it, and the risk is just a bit too high. Next up is Ian, who says, I was planning Romero to Nketiah, but with his injury I'm unsure. I've got 8.7 million in the bank, but I want to keep the 0.1 from Maddison to Rodri. I'm thinking Gross, then move him on after Burnley on the 9th of December. Obviously with Nketiah that's a but frustrating. 8.7 million in the bank though, you are perfectly okay. There's so many good options there. Gross, again, I was speaking about him earlier. I do think is probably one of the best moves you can make right now. I think he could be good to get on early. Someone who's very possible to get a double-digit haul in the next couple of weeks. They've got the likes of Sheffield, and I think they've got Forest soon as well. And he is the guy in the Brighton squad who's playing the full 90 minutes. I think he's played every single minute of every game of the last 5 games for Brighton. So I do think he is very minutes secure. I think I would keep him until the Palace game though, if you're still looking for a captaincy. I think he's probably going to be a more secure captain than Dunk is, because he is still getting the passes the same as Dunk, and Brighton just aren't keeping really many clean sheets. So with Gross, at least you're getting passes in, and you've got a good avenue to other points as well. So in terms of keeping the captaincy, I think I would keep him for 2 more games, keep him for Palace, then get rid of him just over the Christmas period basically. But there is so many good options. There's the likes of Matoma, like we said earlier as well, and then loads of other ones. 8.6 million, you've really got a lot of choices there. I think Bowen might just be a bit more expensive. I think Bowen might be 8.8 actually, so I don't think you can go for him. But again, someone like Mbuemo in a couple of weeks as well could always be decent. Anderson in defence. There is lots of good options, but I definitely like Gross for the upcoming game weeks. Next, FPL Spartans asks for Romero replacements, any defenders for 8 mil or less, or any position for 8.4 mil or less. I think I pretty much covered most of the players I like. In terms of defenders, Anderson, Lascelles, Tsimikas, probably the main 3. In terms of any players, I think again Gross, Mbuemo, also Hwang as well in other positions, Ferguson. I think a Brighton attacker could end up proving very useful as long as you are managing the rotation, and you're picking someone who is fairly nailed on for minutes. Other than that, again, captaincies, there's not too many coming up apart from obviously Fulham Wolves, where you can look at someone like Hwang. I would avoid Polina, because I think with his yellow it's just a bit too risky to go with, but I think there's plenty of options there as well. And it's just, again, it's a tough situation. It's a lot of subs we don't really want to be using in terms of getting the Spurs guys out, but there is a lot of good players available right now with a good run of fixtures that you definitely aren't short for options when it comes to replacements. And our final question of the week comes in from GJ Magpie, who says, what would you do with Namba if he gets a 5th yellow on Saturday, and who are the best replacements? I think again with Nakamba, you probably are just best getting him out on Saturday, because eventually he is going to pick up that yellow card, and you are looking for a good hop-off point for him. I think Sunday is one of those good times to do so. I think the obvious replacement would be Cole Palmer, who plays on Sunday. Obviously Lascelles is at that same price as well, but he does play on Saturday, so you wouldn't get the extra fixture out of it. But Palmer plays on Sunday. at the same price looks like the best option. You could also go Simicast, who also plays on Sunday, 7.2 mil. You're paying a bit extra, but you are getting that Liverpool defender in. I think most of the guys you can bring in right now are going to be short-term replacements. Palmer, we don't know about his minutes when Nkunku comes back. Lascelles, again, minutes risk when Botman comes back. Simicast, minutes risk when Robertson comes back. So a lot of the guys around that price are a bit of a short-term move. So you can have a look yourself and kind of decide which moves you want to go for. But for me, I think it would be those. But I do think Palmer though would be the obvious option at the same price. Obviously, if you can afford more expensive, then go for more expensive. But if you don't have the money in the bank, Palmer playing on the Sunday, getting the extra fixture, does look like a good option. Then you can always adjust after the international break and see what's really happening when Nkunku's back. If Palmer's still playing great, then you've got a player for the long term, and then if he's kind of getting rotated a bit, you can look at moving him back off again. But that is going to wrap up this week's Q&A video then. I don't think there's going to be one next week. I believe it's the international break next week. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. And again, like I said at the start, make sure to follow me over here on Twitter if you want to get involved in those. We do ask a question or to send in your questions every Wednesday night. We're also, I think, 33 subscribers off of 1,000. So if you are new here, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get 1,000 by the end of the year. That would be absolutely unreal. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.